Welcome to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast, providing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs with the 3 INs: insights, inspirations, and intentional actions. Delivered through monologues and dialogues, we address topics like leadership, productivity, time management, work-life balance, and challenges like stress, conflict, mental health, and much more. Please do not hold back from suggesting specific topics and guests you would like on this podcast. Greetings, and thank you for tuning into this episode. And as you probably know by now, every second episode, every second week is one with just me, and every second week it's one with somebody else. And today it's with somebody else, and I'm really excited and feel privileged to have Josh on board with me here today. So let's start with welcoming Josh and hand the camera and microphone over to him.
Hello, Mikhail. Hello, everybody. Happy to be on the show and to be chatting to you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too, indeed. So who are you? What are you doing?
Great. So I'm a Canterbury boy, bred and raised. Grew up in a small kind of rural town out there. One of 5 kids, and then kind of made my way into Christchurch, then up to Wellington, and found myself working in financial consulting for one of the big 4, which was a great kind of platform experience of skills mixed in with a bit of high pressure type work. And then beyond that, I've moved into corporate development, which is a bit of a mix of business strategy, I suppose, improvement of performance of businesses, as well as mergers and acquisitions and investment management. And so that's kind of been my field for the last few years. And I've had a real joy of working with a number of really fascinating firms and industries.
Cool. So I can now imagine some of our audience is starting looking up the map and go, I've heard the word Canterbury, Christchurch. Was that in England? Is that Europe? Where? So shall we just set them at ease and tell them where in the world we are?
So my accent might be a bit of a hint there. You're probably hearing the Kiwi mumble, as we call it. So I'm from New Zealand, and Canterbury is one of the regions of the South Island in New Zealand.
The South Islander. That's where my wife is from, the Canterburyan down there. And I'm in the opposite end of the country, up in the not the far north, but up in the north, where it is a bit warmer than down where Josh is. So, as you know, this is about mental fitness, and it is about telling stories. Stories that hopefully our audience can relate to in one way or other and get inspired by, get some insights into, and then being able to take some intentional actions based on that. And as you know by now, there are 2 sides to the coin of mental fitness. There are the situations in our lives where we end up in trouble because we just didn't have the mental fitness to deal with the challenges that was in front of us, and we either raised our voice or ended up in stress or overwhelm or pissing people off, or whatever the scenario is that we have to fix later. And then there's the other side of the coin, is where we're creating success despite of the challenges in front of us, because in that moment we have a higher level of mental fitness to meet the challenges. So I'm going to encourage Josh here to share with us, hopefully, a story on both sides of that coin, and you can choose what side of the coin you want to start.
Yeah, I think it's a great question and a great topic for conversation, because mental fitness has played a massive role in my life, I think, especially over the last 10 years, with the lack thereof, and then I think building into a bit of a healthier frame. So maybe I'll start with the piece of a lack thereof, because I think that's where the journey began for mental fitness for me. And so where it started was, I hadn't really thought about mental fitness. I hadn't really thought about stress, really. I'd lived a pretty easy life growing up through school and through university. I had a good friend group, a supportive family, did reasonably well through school and study. And then when I got in to working at PwC, which was the consulting firm that I was working for, I quickly found that suddenly I wasn't the smart, experienced kid on the block. I was actually the guy who knew the least out of anybody. And that's a normal thing for somebody starting a new job. You're picking these things up, but it was a new environment for me to be in. And then beyond that, I kind of built this way of working through study that as long as I put the time in, I'd always get it done and be on top of things. And then the other challenge at work was suddenly there was too much work to fit into a day. And then you start going, well, how do I get beyond this? And so my natural response was just to kind of head down, bum up, and kind of work through these pieces and just keep chugging along and chugging along. And, I'd get out the other side because that's how I'd always done it. And I don't think I ever realized that I was putting quite a lot of pressure and stress on myself. At least consciously, I didn't anyway. I think the first signs that I had a lack of mental fitness where it actually came through from my body. And when I was working, I have a very distinct memory of we were going on to client sites, and I had a close friend and colleague who was en route to client. And so I stopped into his place, and we kind of were sitting there talking about the job. And I just found myself getting tight in the chest. I was finding myself quite short of breath, and I thought, oh shit, I've got asthma or something. Something's going wrong here. I've got a cold. And I got to the point where I had to lie down on his bed before going into work and try and calm myself down from that. At the time, I didn't realize it probably was mild panic, and that what was going on, and this kept happening through months, probably nearly for a year. I was having this kind of short of breath moment, and what I didn't recognize at the time was that I wasn't equipped to deal with it and couldn't really recognize it. So that's probably a piece that led to some evolution going forward. But that was where I was kind of finding myself lacking on the mental fitness side.
Thank you. Thank you for your openness and being willing to share that with us. So, how did you recognize that that had an impact on other aspects of your life, like your happiness or your health or relationship or family, or like did it affect other things, or was it just like you were just in work mode and it was like
So a big piece where I was, as you said, in work mode, zoned in, but inevitably, I view work as a part of life, and so it bleeds into all other aspects of your life. There were times when I'll be lying in bed with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I'd be having these short breath moments, and she'd be worriedly reaching over and going, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And we thought about, calling an ambulance in and those types of things when it got really strained. And so I think it was freaking her out a little bit. And it also, when you're having that, you've got this kind of stress built up. You're not your best self in your every moment, right? And so even if I had huge chunks of happiness. I've always been quite a happy person, and I'd still be happy for the time. But was I living my best life and being the best version of me at that point in time? Definitely not.
mm, mm. So again, I think what is really important here to understand is that when our mental fitness is at a lower level and we don't have that awareness and we end up in these stressful situations, is that it is impacting everything in our lives. It's impacting our happiness, and it doesn't mean you end up being super unhappy, but you end up less happy than you otherwise could be. And your relationships, your friendships, your hobbies, and all of that, like everything suffers from that. So it's not just an isolated situation, but the isolated situation that brought it into your consciousness was in this case the workplace. For other people, it comes into their private lives, where suddenly the wife or the husband goes, "Hey, you need to sort your shit out or you're out," kind of thing. I've had that happen to me, so I know that. So you can, I will leave it up to you what you want to do next. Like you can either then tell us a completely different story of where your mental fitness had gotten much better and you dealt with that, or you could maybe tell us the story of what happened then that started shifting that, because that could maybe give people some idea of what they can do if they're feeling they're in a little bit of a hugely stressed kind of situation where they're struggling.
Yeah, I think the logical place to go is to continue on that thread, right? And because I think that's really the journey that brought me into mental fitness. And so, as I'd mentioned, I didn't really actually. It was probably quite naive and almost a little bit stupid looking back on it. But I didn't realize I was stressed. I just thought that I was having some kind of sickness or my body was failing in some kind because I was just working. I was just living my life. I could do that, right? Body shouldn't be shutting down for those reasons, or at least that's what I was telling myself at the time. That's what I understood how bodies worked. Little did I know, and so I went to a doctor and was kind of like, oh. I wonder if I've got a chest infection or something. I'm struggling with my breath, and they kind of said there was nothing wrong, and thought to put me on some medication for anti-anxiety, which to me was a bit of a splash of cold water in the face. I was going, oh, what the heck? Like this doctor thinks it's because I'm stressed out and that's what's causing this, and they want to put me on some drugs to support that, and something just didn't quite fit right. I was going, oh, I don't really understand what's going on here. And actually, I had a and I'll give kudos to my girlfriend because she was working with me the entire time through this, and been a great partner. But a kind of trigger conversation was with my brother, who's a psychologist, and he kind of said, "Oh, look, maybe don't take the pills, and try and have a look at what do you think is actually going on, and what's causing it." And so, having kind of recognized that I was working long and I was going, maybe I'm not looking after myself in the right ways. That was kind of these kind of breadcrumb trails of getting me somewhere. And then it was actually my wife to be girlfriend at the time put me in touch with her father, who I'm sitting across from now, Mikhail. So we know each other quite well. Who had kind of has a range of different skills with coaching, life, and business, and other elements. And she said, maybe she said, my dad's done a lot of breathing work before, and given your breath is having issues, maybe it's a good opportunity to talk to him. And so you recall we had some great conversations and talking about how stress manifests, talking about awareness and understanding where some of these pieces are coming from, and then also doing some breathing training. I didn't realize you could breathe wrongly, but I was very much breathing wrongly. I was breathing through my chest and my shoulders, and I was holding it up there, and felt like I couldn't get enough oxygen into my lungs. And it turns out I hadn't been breathing out in a very long time. And this probably sounds like a very specific scenario, but it was kind of the first trigger point and tool for me to go, oh, here's something I can actually do that breathe out and breathe in properly and take a moment of calm, and that kind of was the first stepping point to finding a bit of a center. And then you start adding other pieces around it and going, what else brings me that same sense and that same clarity and distance and but closeness with yourself at the same time. And then you have pieces like, well, running did that for me, and exercise. Lying down on a Shakti mat did that for me. All of the spending time having quiet conversation with my wife did that for me. And all these pieces start coming in. You go, I think that was the first piece where I was going, this is the framework starting to build for mental fitness. And as I started putting those pieces around me, I found that I was getting calmer. I wasn't needing to work as long to do what I was needing to do, and I was just starting to feel better on a day-to-day basis. So that's probably the summary view of it, but I'm sure we can dig into other pieces as we need to.
One of the things that really stood out to me with what you shared was that you were stressed and you didn't know. And it was kind of mind-boggling to me when I heard that, when you said that. And then when I think about it, it's like, actually, I think there's a lot more people, unfortunately, in that place that just thinking, feeling this intensity is normal. Like you've got to study, you're going to work long hours, and if you want to be successful, you're going to work overtime, and there's pressure, and that is just part of life, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And that's where you were in. And for me, it's really sad, because I know it doesn't need to be like that. And now you know it doesn't need to be like that. So thank you for being here, sharing that with our audience, and hopefully some people listening to that makes them just go, okay, okay, well, maybe I should just find a way of pausing, and whether it's breathing or whatever it is. And thank you also for mentioning the breathing, because I've been a breathing coach for 30 plus years, helping thousands of people. And in my experience over those decades, is that very close to like more than 95% of adults breathing is out of order. It is not in the place it naturally should be in. And when we don't breathe properly, or naturally, should I say, the way we're meant to breathe, it is affecting a tremendous amount of things in our body and therefore also in our mind. So it's actually a very quick way to get to relax and to reconnect with this moment. And then in that gap or that space, more common sense comes into it, and we can kind of go, oh, maybe I just need to go outside and take 3 breaths, or maybe I just need to stop and have a glass of water, or maybe I should go for a run, or whatever it may be, and then come back to what I'm doing and do it more effectively or efficiently. So I kind of heard you say that, but not using that word. So I'll put it back to you as a question. Do you feel that taking that bit of time and energy out to working on the breathing and just calming down a little bit and looking a bit more after yourself, and then coming back to the work situation that can still be stressful and intense, that do you feel that you became more efficient in the sense of being able to do what you still would have done, but do it either quicker or do it more effectively or at a higher quality? What would you say?
I think both, 100% yes. I think you end up um, performing better, producing higher quality work, and I also believe that I work more efficiently as a result as well. So you have these moments where you've got a really hard problem in front of you. Let's say there's this cog in the business strategy that you know something's wrong with, but you can't quite pick at it. And if you sit there and sit there and sit there and sit there, sure you'll get there at some point, but you wind yourself up and you feel like you should be getting this problem, but you're not. And I think that sometimes that's actually showing a lack of mental fitness, because you're not understanding the triggers that your body's telling you. Your body's telling you actually sitting in this room and just grinding at this issue isn't going to get it solved any faster. And actually going and stepping away and having a good conversation with somebody, or going for a walk out. I went for a walk out in the rain today, actually, just to step away from the desk for a moment, and then came back refreshed with some new ideas and thoughts. And it tends, your mind starts to percolate in more natural ways, and I think in stronger ways, when you're looking after yourself and you're giving it the freedom to do so. And so I think, going to your earlier point around, it's sad about seeing that, probably people are in stress without knowing a lot. I think that's really common, especially in the industry that I'm working in, and kind of corporate finance, corporate development. You see people all the time where work and work hours are kind of badges of honor, and that's what you're kind of putting forward, and you're putting this stress on yourself without really realizing it, because it's seen as normality, but actually having your body pumping a small amount of adrenaline all the time is not how we're designed, right?
No, it's definitely not how we're designed. And stress, I talk a lot about that with my clients, and I understand the science behind it. So, um, stress is a natural thing for the body, but it's only meant to be for very short bursts of time. And it's like when we are in dangerous situations, adrenaline is pumping and there's high level stress. We are made for that. but only for a few seconds or a couple of minutes at a time. And then we need a long time after that for everything to come back to normal. So if we're living in that, as you said, low level kind of stress almost permanently, which a lot of people are, which means we are actually compromised mentally and physically at say 20% or 15% permanently. And the body can handle that for a few years, but it can't handle it for a very long time. And then we start paying the price. And that's essentially what you experienced in the first story that you shared. So and thank you for acknowledging also that taking that time to look after yourself improves the quality of the work you're doing. And I think we all know that we've had a challenge. No, no, I love doing Sudokus or killer Sudokus. And I'm sitting there and I cannot solve this damn thing. And luckily by now I know when I get to that place, just grinding on with it, it's not useful. I will eventually get there, but it's not useful. So I just stop and then I go and do something entirely different. And then I might come back to it a couple of hours later. And 9 out of 10 times when I come back to it, it's solved within 2 minutes. And I cannot understand why couldn't I see that? And it's because our minds get into this grind. And I noticed when you mentioned that, were actually frowning and you were tightening when you talked about that, and then you opened back up when you let that out. So again, that is a sign when we are going into that space, even talking about it. And again, as a coach, it's a privilege for me because I can see it when I talk to people when they are in that place. And then I can guide them out of it in that moment and give them the tools and that for it. So now that everybody knows that I know you, I would love for you to, well, we'll come to another story maybe about how mental fitness has then benefited in your later years. But I know that you have changed your life dramatically over this time and really stepped into at a really high level valuing your non-work time and doing, to me, some really crazy things that I'm going, wow, that's really, really, really cool that you didn't do early on. That was just not on the radar. And now it's like, it seems that you're saying yes to everything. Skiing, okay, I'll give it a go. Oh, I'll do that. Hiking, okay, we can do that. So tell us a little bit about that shift. Like, I'm sure it was just overnight and suddenly you were this, or maybe it was. Like, just yeah, tell us a bit about that journey and where you're at today with that.
Sure. It definitely wasn't overnight. Definitely wasn't an overnight flick. Like most things, it was kind of a gradual change, and but probably the context was the real trigger point is while I was working and probably not quite in the same era I was talking about when I was having my breathing issues, but after that I was also studying for my chartered financial analyst CFA at the same time, and that was just a lot of work. And I found myself I was getting up at 5 a.m. to do a couple of hours of study before work, leaving for work at 7, coming back later after dinner, doing a couple more hours of study, and then going to bed at 9 o'clock and being exhausted, and then popping back up again. And I just remember through that time, I remember my wife asking me if I wanted to go for a walk, and my answer would be, "Oh no, I've got to study." And flatmates coming up to me saying, "Should we play a board game?" "Oh, what board game is it?" "It's this one." "Oh, that takes an hour. Can't fit that time." And no, I won't do that. I'll go back to work and study. And I was becoming a person that didn't fit with who I wanted to be. It was someone that was saying no to everything. It was someone that was only focused on work and performance, and that felt like it was narrowing who I was. And there was a piece around that where it was started wishing away the weeks and waiting for the weekends. And when you're wishing away 5/7 of your time, there's not a lot of time left. And so it was kind of over this time, I was feeling this piece where I was going, I feel as though I'm acting against my nature, acting against what I want to be. And so there was this shift of going, who is it that I want to be? And what life do I want to be living? And it was about uh, not necessarily constructing that personal identity, but uncovering it and finding it, and through conversations with my wife, with friends, with family, seeing and listening to my own body and myself about things that got me excited, and then suddenly it was kind of going, well, if I'm going to be a yes person, because that's what I like to be. I wanted to be a yes. I wanted to be a doer. My identity was around being somebody that would go out and do things, and that's what I wanted to be. And so it wasn't as much as going, let's find a hobby and do a hobby like that. It was going, well, now these shackles are kind of falling off, and I'm just going to get out and do things. And so, as you said, I hadn't water skied, hadn't skied, didn't do a lot of hiking. Was pretty tame with my days. Mostly been study and work, and then we my wife and I made the move to Canada to really accelerate some of those pieces. And over there, it was a real shift of going, what is life all about? It's about enjoying every moment, is in my mind. And so there was this transformation in terms of who I was and what I was doing, and that led to so much more happiness in all moments in life. I think, from going out and hiking on a precarious ledge in Angels Landing in the United States to skiing down a mountain with my pigeon toes that don't conform too well, and doing all these fun things. So that's probably a piece there that I just want to stick with, and the beauty is when you're coming at it from a identity point of view, and I think I've got a couple of other good role models in my life who do this as well. It's not as though you're trying to force yourself to do something. It's just naturally what you want to come, and what comes to you.
Mm, mm. Well, massive congratulations to you for, making that shift there. I know there's a lot of people who would like to make those shifts, but just don't know where to begin. And then there's people like yourself in the beginning who don't even know you need to make that shift. So completely lack of awareness, another word you mentioned earlier on. And one thing in there that really again stood out to me, and it stood out to me because it is probably the most important thing in my life and also in my job as a coach. And that is really taking time to focus on who is it I want to be and what is it that not what I want to be doing in my life, but what is it I want to experience on a day-to-day basis? Do I want to experience boredom, or do I want to experience excitement? And nothing wrong with boredom if that's what you want to experience, but be really clear, what is it you want to experience? And as you started exploring that, you at one level started realizing the way you were doing life was actually not living up to what you really wanted. And then you also realized that, well, I could blame my wife, maybe I could blame my father-in-law, maybe I could blame my parents, or I could maybe blame the economy. And it was like, none of that is going to fly because none of it's going to make any change if I blame those people. Actually, I don't even need to blame myself. All I need to do is just get clear on what is it actually I want to experience on a day-to-day basis. Who is it I want to be? And the clearer we get on that, things just fall into place because then it's not a big challenge to decide what to say yes and no to. And then we can
Totally,
say,
yeah,
yeah, and then we can say no to that which we need to say no to. And there's always going to be more things in our lives that we want to do than we have time to do. So there are things you have to say no to every day. But it becomes easier to do that when we are clear on what it is we're going to say yes to and what we will not stand for. Yeah. So I wanted just to piggyback on that a little bit because I think that's a really valuable lesson you've had. And I really love the way you shared that with us. Um, Any other story, another story maybe from, the last few years or last week of your life of either an achievement or success you have created that was really, really challenging. But because of a higher level of mental fitness, and even though there might be moments of stress and moments, maybe even anxiety, you were able to still push through that, do the breathing exercise or whatever you did, because your mental fitness was at a higher level. Is there a story you're happy to share with us?
Yeah, yeah. This is something reasonably recently comes to mind, and I think it's important to note that mental fitness doesn't mean I don't. Well, at least I don't believe that you are stress free and you avoid stress. It's about how do you manage, how do you bounce back, how long does it last, and how much does it impact you, right? Those are all pieces in my mind of what a low mental fitness would have if you're suffering those types of symptoms. Whereas someone with a who is mentally fit will bounce back. That stress won't bog them down in the same way. It won't last to the same extent, and they'll actually perform better under that stress as well. So I think that's the interesting point that I want to draw out of what you were saying there. But it's something that recently with me, I've actually so I mentioned before that I've been in Canada. I've moved back now to Christchurch, New Zealand, and Christchurch is a relatively small market in comparison to a lot of other cities. It's not really one of the main business hubs in New Zealand, and I've been looking. I've been in a fixed term contract at the moment, and at the same time have been looking at going into a more permanent role, looking at kind of options, and this really great opportunity with a really well respected investment organization came up at just really the wrong time. And it was, I was only 6 months into my 12-month contract. So I felt like I didn't want to be leaving at the point that I was, but jobs come few and far between in Christchurch. There was a case study that this investment firm wanted me to work through that just so happened to fall across the same weekend that I was going to Australia to visit a friend. And so just these pieces had kind of come together and brewed up a really nasty wee storm for me over a few days. And I think probably Josh 10 years ago would have gone in and gone, shit, what am I going to do? Like, okay, just work, go, get into it, start doing it, sit at the airport, sit on the plane, do it as you're going the whole way through. And it would have been probably more of a panicked flurry. Whereas now thinking about under what conditions do I perform best and do I feel best? What was important to me about that weekend? It was important that I did right by my current work. I spent the time with friends who were really important to me. And I also put my best foot forward for this job as well, right? And you start going, well, how do you make that work? And so on the plane going over, it was a 3.5 hour flight over to Australia. I remember thinking, it's not about rushing and trying to get some pieces done. I didn't think I'll be very efficient on a plane. And so I did some breathing. I read my book. I pulled the chair back and let it lounge a bit and just felt really relaxed and good. Didn't have it cross my mind really in that first day seeing my friends and it wasn't something that I felt was hanging over me in that first day, which is a lovely feeling to have. It felt like you can be your full happy self, right? And then my body being a bit out of sync with Australian time, I woke up at 5:30 in the morning, feeling really wired. Brain was pumping. I went, oh shit, everyone else is sleeping. Well, let's just get into things. And so it was actually in those moments you suddenly do a few hours work in the morning before others rise, and you're humming and you feel like you're achieving something. And so I know it's not some big grandiose story, but it's more just how it can kind of work in every day to day in terms of your body will respond and your mind will respond in the right ways when you're feeding it the right things. And feeding it those right things can be time and time to enjoy pieces, and you perform better. And really, thankfully, I ended up submitting a great case study, I think, and landed the job, which I'm starting in just over a week's time, and I'm very excited about that. And at the same time, had a great trip with my friends, and feel as though I'm leaving on really good terms with my current work as well. So it's little cogs that can make the whole wheel spin.
Hmm. So win, win, and win. Win, I get both with the current job, the new, and all that. So what a wonderful story. And again, kudos to you for recognizing that and putting that seat back in the aeroplane and just go, hey, I'm not going to stress about this. I'm going to chill out. And then when the opportunity is there and the time is there to work hard and put the effort into it, then that presented itself to you. And thank you for sharing about the mental fitness, the way you were seeing it. So now I don't have to say that you did it for me. I appreciate that. The
Mhm.
only thing I want to add is that it may maybe sound to our audience at times when I'm talking that mental fitness is either you have it or you don't have it, and it doesn't work that way. It's on a complete spectrum.
Mm.
And however, like it's like you can maybe feel more mentally fit at work and less mentally fit at home, or the other way around. But overall, there is kind of a place along that spectrum where you'll be sitting at this moment in time, like any human being will be. So for me, it's about recognizing, okay, so this is my current mental fitness level, and what can I do now to shift that bar and growing that. So at some level, from having known you for a long time, it wasn't that your mental fitness was rock bottom, because a lot of the things that I saw you achieve and the human being you were when you started coming into our home and wouldn't eat the dinners I was cooking, um, which has changed dramatically, I have to say. It's fantastic. You were still there was still some good mental fitness there. However, when it came to managing yourself and pressure and high level pressure, you did not have a very high level of mental fitness to deal with that at that time. So yours, wherever it was at that time, then took some major leaps actually. It's a completely different place today. The good news, the bad news, however way you want to look at it, is that there's a lot more space over here.
Totally.
And I've been on this journey for 40 years and I'm nowhere near the top. So I'm a work in progress as well. And I'm continuously daily working on that in my own life, which I believe I need to be if I want to be coaching it to other people as well. So
I'm
you,
just picking up on that, Mikhail. Interesting to hear. So there's a few things that you've obviously picked up in my stories that I do to help improve how I'm feeling from a mental of like breathing, going for runs or walks, lying on my Shakti mat, those types of things. What do you see work for other people as well? I'm interested to know. Is it all within those types of spheres of activities or thought processes, or how wide does it
Hmm.
span for people to progress?
Thanks for the question, Josh. It is massive variety. And it's a massive variety for a whole number of reasons. Um, one thing that makes things different is age. So when I'm working with people, start working with people in their 60s, it tends to be different things that work for them. When I work with females and males, it's different. Then we also have different personalities. We have like the introverts, the extroverts, the sensory people, the intuitive people. Those dynamics also play into what works, what works for people. So for many people, it's about creating a good morning routine. So most of the people coming working with their morning routine, waking up, checking their emails, getting their coffee, and they're starting the day in this place. And how can you be mentally fit in that? So that's one of the more common one. However, there are clients that doing a morning routine is just a complete waste of time. So there is no one answer.
Mhm.
But in general, looking after your body physically, whether that's if your breathing is not in its best place, working on that, doing some exercise. You don't have to be extreme, but the body is made to move. So those things are kind of common. And then the whole question around mindfulness meditation almost always comes in. which again means 100 different things to 100 different people. Um, so again, is finding, for me, the most important thing is find what works for you. That's what I would say to all my clients. I will give you suggestions. I will have you try things. If it doesn't work, we throw it out. We try something else. But it's about trying new things and figuring out. So the things I'm doing today is completely different to what I did 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 2 years ago. Things I do today is different than what I did 6 months ago. So I am continuously looking for things that work for me. And the funny, interesting thing here is that people will come to me and other people say, "Oh, you need to do this. This is great. This is really going to work. It's changed my life. You got to do this. You got to do this." And it's like, maybe, maybe not. What works, and then I learned that the hard way, Josh. I lost a lot of friends back in time when I knew everything in the early days until I came to realize I knew freaking nothing. And it's not about me trying to get people to do things my way. It's about supporting people in finding what works for them. So thanks for it was kind of a long around the bend kind of answer to your question, but I think it's actually a really important message to get across is try stuff like you did. I help you a bit with the breathing, but you tried other things and you did this and you did that and through that. And there's one tool actually that I would like for you to share with our audience, and that's a tool that you taught me and my wife a few years ago when we were in COVID lockdown. And you guys ended up because your wife wanted to come and stay with her parents, and you being the good boyfriend decided to come along. And 3 weeks in lockdown turned out to 5 weeks that we were together in the same house. And I have to say, I was absolutely impressed with all of us and how we handled that. But you introduced us to something that really, actually, in a roundabout way, is really helping with mental fitness that my wife and I have now done almost every single day together. And whenever we are together with you guys, we do it together. But you introduced us. So tell us a story about that.
Yeah, certainly can, and the origins of it are actually quite funny. It was when I was at university, we had a flat of six boys all flatting together, and you know what those types of households are like. There's bit of dirt around. There's a bit of testosterone. There's a bit of fun, and every evening we'd always make sure that we ate together. And often you kind of be talking around some really bullshit conversation, to be honest, of some random sphere, and then one of the flatmates said that let's do composts and daisies, and I kind of went, well, what's a compost and daisy, and the idea is that you lay down your compost, you lay down your shit. What's gone on your day that wasn't good? What's something that you feel like you need to just slop down and put out there, and air that out, and then secondly, your daisy, plant the seed into that compost. What was your good thing? Your piece of the day that made you feel good. That comes out of us, and it was a funny kind of. You'd think kind of six boys, or you wouldn't want to be talking about those types of feelings and those pieces, but there's something really cathartic and close about it, about feeling connected to yourself and to each other as you're doing it, when you're kind of saying, oh, actually, this thing that I probably would have just mulled over internally and not said to anybody, this really sucked today. And everyone kind of goes, well, everyone else has got something that sucked in their day as well. But we've also got something good that came through. And it makes you really appreciate the goodness in your day as well. And so that was something that my wife and I have been doing now for years, and thoroughly enjoy, and do it at every dinner table, and kind of came to hit it during COVID lockdown as well, when you're kind of in your bubble, and we were staying with Mikkel and his wife as well, and kind of spread about from there. And actually, I have a lot of different friends who still do it and continue doing it today as well.
Awesome, awesome. We love it. And I said my wife and I, we do it every dinner time. And even when they're friends here, we'll get them to do it to do it as well. And it is that like it is just taking that moment of actually just voicing something. And it doesn't have to be any major disaster that happened in a day. It's just, I feel a bit low today, or I got a little bit of a sore tooth, or or it can be something really quite big, but just actually voicing it and just getting it, as you say, a bit cathartic, so just get that out. And then the joys of then now we got the compost, what are we going to grow in it? And then in that sharing something that we appreciated today. And yes, there are days where like, oh, I don't know, it's anything today. But the reality is there is always something. You
Mm.
just, there can
It's
just not
always
be,
something.
there's always, and it doesn't have to be this big, huge, massive success, but just getting into this habit of acknowledging good things. And that actually builds your mental fitness. It builds your mental resilience and growing that part of you. And so that is something, thank you for sharing that, that I would love for our audience to take with them and try out for themselves. And what my wife and I have added to it in the last number of months is that we also have to share three things we are grateful for. And again, there are days where it's like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." But we have to. And it's really fascinating because there's always, we can say, I'm grateful there's food in the fridge. We make really basic things. But when you start looking over the day, what am I grateful for today? It's like, oh, there was that person down at the shop that treated me really well, or I had a really good coffee out today, or whatever it may be. It shifts your energy. It just shifts your mental place. And then we have one other rule in that, and again, for our audience, you can take it with you or not. But in this case, since we are a couple, one of our gratitudes have to be about our partner being our partner. So it kind of forces you. So when you've had a shit day with your wife and you have to say something you're grateful to, it is actually really, really powerful to do that. On good days, it's a lot easier, but it's still very powerful to do that. So thank you for that, Josh. Um, I would like to finish our session here today with you sharing just a quick story about transformation in your life. You actually mentioned the word transformation probably about 20 minutes ago. Um, so for me, there's change and there's transformation. And change, nothing wrong with that, particularly not if it's good change. I favor change above no change. But I favor transformation over change. Because when there is a transformation, like what happened with you earlier, in getting clear on what it is you wanted to experience, then that feeds into the daily decisions that we are making without having to think too much about it. It's kind of become a part of our mindset, like it has become for you. So clearly, that was a transformation for you. Have you got another story you're happy to share?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because yeah, transformation you do kind of think is something fundamental in a more dramatic shift. And so for me, the one that, as I spoke to earlier, that comes straight to mind is the uncovering of my personal purpose and identity, right? And the transformation that came alongside that. But I think there are some smaller transformations that happen on a day to day actually. And for instance, one in my current job at the moment, the one that I'm finishing up in a week's time, is we me and the CFO would work really closely together on preparing board presentations and kind of working through these topics. And it was actually we had one meeting right early on when I started that we just absolutely missed. We had myself, the CEO, and the CFO were all on slightly different wavelengths. Our narrative was not consistent. Our logic was bumbling and all over the show, and we came out of it. And you feel kind of crap, right? You go, oh, we missed that. You meet with this board once every 2 months. It's what does that do moving forward? And what was really interesting was the CFO got us in a room straight away afterwards, and we're all a bit ticked off that it didn't go well. But he goes, well, I think we can all agree that was a fuck up. And then he said, so what are we doing next time? and that was. It sounded like a tiny thing, but I was kind of expecting. I'd been in workplaces in the past where you weren't on the same page with somebody, they would fire up, and it would be accusations, and it would be finger pointing at other people. But this was just so much right. All right, we're in this together. Where are we going to from here? And I think that transformation was a work transformation for me of going, actually, don't get bogged down in these pieces that you can't change, these pieces of the past, and look forward to all the things that you can going forward. And so we really put in place a whole number of new elements that we could kind of get aligned with and test each other prior to future meetings. We had much more robust but also emotional conversations leading up to them, and feeling like that, and this probably is almost more of a change than a transformation, because it's in a specific area, but the transformation is that I think you can pull it across, and I've trying to across a number of aspects of your life, and kind of looking at a running race that you've been in, and it goes crap. It's slippery. You don't feel good on the day, and then it's not dwelling on what was the issue there, what went wrong. It's going, oh heck yeah, what am I doing next? Where does the journey go to from here, and how do I lift from here as well? So that's my bigger transformation, was the personal identity piece that we spoke to earlier. But there's always little transformations that affect you through your life, I think. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that, because again, what I want to get across to the audience here, yes, it's great to have these big transformations that is completely life-changing, but they're difficult to create, and they're difficult to create on a regular basis. Very difficult. So in the meantime, let's go for the smaller ones, where we can create these shifts. And since we're here in the name of mental fitness, what I will say is that your colleague in that moment had a high level of mental fitness, because if not, he could very easily go into stress mode, blaming mode, and all of that.
Mm.
But he had the capacity in that moment to go, okay, we fucked up. Now let's talk about that and see how can we shift that so that next time it's an entirely we're not just changing next time to make it a little bit better than what we did today. We're going to transform our next presentation, and it's going to be at an entirely different level when we see the board next time. I don't know if that happened or not, but at least the opportunity for that to happen is there.
No, I'm happy to say it totally did. I feel as though we've been humming recently, so that's good.
Fantastic. Congratulations on that. So we really enjoyed talking with you in this form, which is not the way we normally talk. And I really appreciate your stories, and I really want to honor you for your honesty and your willingness to be open with the journey you've been on, and the shift that you've created in your life. So thank you very much, Josh, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Mikhail. And yeah, like I said at the start, I think this is a great topic and something that a lot of people should be more aware of and get into, because mental fitness really is a game changer.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. If you have stories of how mental fitness has benefited you that you are happy to share, go to my website, mikhail.nz, click on podcast and fill in the guest application form. If you want direct support from me utilizing my 40 years of mental fitness learning and practice, email me at coach@mikhail.nz or message me on LinkedIn. Any feedback, review, share, follow, like, or any other good stuff is, of course, appreciated. Thank you for listening to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail Nelson.